All right, welcome to the channel today. And today I've got the absolute pleasure of having Darren all the way from the UK. Darren, why don't you give us a quick introduction of who you are and a bit of your experience with Google Ads?
Sure, yeah. I'm Darren Taylor. I am a digital marketing consultant and a Google Ads, I suppose, consultant as well. I basically started in digital marketing probably would have been around 2011, and that was in an agency specializing in small business clients, not necessarily enterprise level. So a lot of kind of, small budgets and a lot of challenges, website challenges, that kind of stuff. But I think that was a good environment to kind of learn PPC. From there, I basically went on to client side. So I was kind of working in some FTSE 100 businesses, a software startup, a few other businesses from there. And then I found myself back into consultancy, branching out as myself under darrentaylor.com and kind of working with clients on an individual basis, both from a fractional perspective. So in a business, kind of understanding the business challenges, using PPC as one of the tools of many, but also just straight, auditing PPC accounts and working with clients on their strategies. So it's been a bit of a journey, but it's been fun.
Yeah.
Really interested in digital marketing as a whole, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it's amazing to have you here. And obviously, I like talking with a lot of different PPCers, but one of the things I do like is I always like the experience when someone can bring both sides of the table. And that's what my intro into Google Ads was. I actually ran my first campaign by doing for my own business. So I just think it's my biggest encouragement to anyone out there is if you're serious about this sort of a digital marketing as a career, at some stage, try to hop on both sides. Don't just stay on the agency side or the freelancer side. Also try to get into an in-house team because you do definitely see it from a completely different perspective.
Yeah, and it allows you to ask the questions as well. It's really interesting. You can ask the questions from both sides.
Yeah. And I think also too, we can sometimes get just so blinded by the stats within the Google Ads dashboard, but just knowing that, look, it's an important point to look at, but ultimately I always come back and say it's what's happening in the bottom line of the business, especially if you're dealing with a small to medium business. It's always got to do with not just the revenue, but the profit that's coming down at the bottom.
100%, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about keyword match types. And the reason for why I guess I probably wanted to get you to talk about this is that we've both got a similarity in that we've been in Google Ads, way back since 2010, 2011. So we've been along this long journey of how Google has been changing match types. The first thing I'd really probably like to ask is, what differences, of any, do you see between exact match and phrase match since Google has changed the way that match types operate? And I'll really be honing on from about the late 2021, 2022. Yeah, what do you see the differences between those two match types?
Yeah, it's interesting. As you say, it's been a bit of a journey. And I think for me, when I look at phrase match, it's becoming a little bit defunct. I never used to think like that. For me, it used to be kind of a go-to match type after modified broad match disappeared. But phrase became less phrase and became very much close to broad. And then exact was no longer exact and it became much more close to phrase. So it's kind of taken a backward step on both sides of it. But I think, going back to your question, I think the main difference I typically see when I look into accounts is, yes, exact match is no longer exact and it does branch out way beyond the keyword itself. But with phrase, it collects way more search terms than exact is what I find. So for example, I work with an architecture firm and we've tried phrase and we've tried exact as kind of a test to kind of see what traffic quality changes happen and what conversion rate changes happen as a result of that. And what I found interesting is on phrase, we match to a ton of competitor keywords. So when you think of the industry of architecture, you have companies and you have individuals. So an individual architect will set up a practice. So you'll just get a bunch of names appearing in the search terms like James Smith Architects or Tom Jones Architects or whatever. But that never happened with exact. So there's still a good difference between the two in terms of terms they collect. But I think for me, phrase is still pretty much way more open than exact in a lot of ways. You kind of, exact for me is definitely going to give you more quality, even though it's not exact anymore.
Yeah. And the thing, I agree with your sentiments in regards to, like I've said for so long, I miss the days of broad match modifiers and single keyword ad groups and all of those things. But I do also understand why the changes have been made. And I think that's one thing too that we can get onto at a later date. But one of the things that I would, I guess, probably like to add to your comments there is, and I think you hit it right in that phrase sort of operates more like broad and exact operates old school, probably like a broad match modifier or something like that. But it does reach out a little bit further. But my issue that I have with phrase match at the moment is, if we both agree that is the case, the problem then lies that broad match, if it's acting more like broad match, but broad match does have more signals to it. So then it becomes the case of, where it sort of sits there. So this probably leads into the next question would be, what type of match types do you use as a go-to now, and when and how do you use each one? Hello there, and I hope you're enjoying my latest interview. I just wanted to quickly let you know that all of these interviews are sponsored by my paid Google Ads community, which is called the Google Ads Mastery Community. I set this community up for one clear purpose, and that is so that I could provide people with direct Google Ads support, and we do this in three main ways. Firstly, we run weekly live calls, and these are live calls that are run in all different time zones so that we can get the support to you. And it's where you can actually ask myself and also highly skilled members of my Defined Digital Academy team direct questions about your Google Ads campaigns. We then also run monthly masterclasses, and these are in-depth teachings for what you need for success with Google Ads. And they don't only cover things inside of the Google Ads dashboard, we also cover specific training around things like offline conversions and how to increase the performance of your landing pages. All the important things you need for true success with Google Ads. And above all else, we've got our Google Ads community feed, and this is where you can join well over 300 other like-minded professionals like you. And we've got Google Ads specialists, agency owners, and also direct business owners who are there supporting and helping each other with how to see the best success with Google Ads throughout the year. And the best thing about this community is that it's all at a really low price, because you can get full access for less than the price of a cup of coffee every day. And that's why I set up this community, is so that you can get tailored Google Ads support for a very low price. Right now, we're going to get right back into the interview, but if you'd like to find out more information about how you could join, and plus also get a lifetime discount to join my Google Ads Mastery community, just follow the link in the description below.
Okay, so I think the main thing for me is conversion data in an account.
Yeah.
You might have a
100%.
new business starting a new kind of campaign, and they haven't got any conversion data, or they've started again in some respects and there's nothing there. So you want to be a bit more controlled. So you might start with exact and then migrate to broad match at a later date. If there's an account with loads of data, typically I go with broad match. I never used to. It's been a bit of a journey getting to this stage. I think, if you look back at my YouTube video archives, there'll be many a video of me criticizing broad match, probably, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5, and even after they made the announcement that broad match is now smart match, and it was kind of I think it was Ginny Marvin at Search Engine Land said it, made the announcement, I was still highly skeptical. I was massively skeptical, so I didn't really use it. But as time's gone on, broad match is amazing. It's an amazing match type, and you'll be surprised, even with not as you probably don't need as much data as you think to make it work when you compare it to the performance of definitely phrase, but sometimes even exact in some respects. Again, it depends on industry. If it's high volume, then to me it's a no-brainer. If it's a lot lower volume, a lot more niche, if it's kind of B2B, broad is not amazing for B2B. It just can't find those signals in the right way. It kind of goes towards the consumer side a little bit sometimes. But generally speaking, any new account that's got data, I will pretty much go with broad match.
Yeah. The one thing, I actually asked this question to Ginny, she put a post up about it, and I haven't got a response back, because it was actually back in, I think it was 2022. Now, it wasn't in regards to actual keyword match type, it's in regards to just before they phased out expanded text ads, they released that it was 2,000 impressions per month in order to test a headline. So what my question was phrasing was, because that previously, a year before that, it was at 5,000. So they released it at 5,000, then it went to 2,000, and then they stopped releasing that data. So I asked the question, what is the current viewpoint on testing? But where that comes back to is that over time, Google has got a lot better with picking up signals and matching user intent with what we're achieving. The thing that really, I guess, probably opened my eyes to broad match and the possibilities of broad match, I do agree with you, though, that it's very much better on the consumer side, not B2B, the way that it happens from a searcher. So not thinking the advertiser, thinking the actual searcher, and the recommendations have gotten a lot better. So I spent, this was actually 2 years ago, so a while ago, we spent 2 months over in Japan. So the previous 8 months, so 2 months in Japan, previous 6 months was my whole search history was about Japanese accommodation, Japanese tourism, all of those things, everything to do with that. The week I got back, there was a pretty severe dog attack in our area. And there was listing out all dog breeds. And one of the dog breeds was the Japanese Corsa. So I searched this Filipino dog first. These are the list of banned dogs. And then I typed in JA, and it recommended the Japanese Torsa. And that really opened my eyes to go how quickly Google is picking up the actual searcher intent. And that was off my second search, knowing that everything previously was all about Japan tourism, places to live. As soon as I typed in that JA, because it was on my second dog search, it recommended that.
It knew
and that was the thing
intuitively.
And that's the thing that opened up I went, okay, this is where broad match can work and why it can be so effective.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've seen accounts where you look at the search terms report, and that's why I'm not that aggressive adding negatives anymore. I kind of hold back a little bit more longer than I normally would have done with the old school kind of SCAG setup, exact match, that kind of era, because I've seen search terms that should have no right whatsoever to convert, and they convert. And then when you check in on the data in the back end of a CRM system in the lead gen world, and you kind of ask the client, is this a good lead? That's a strange search.
Yeah.
They go, yeah, it converted. We made a sale, or it's been a good conversation, or whatever it might be. And it's kind of like, well, why are they typing this in? So one of my clients is a broadband comparison website here in the UK. And you look at their search terms on Broadmatch, and one of their top converting search terms that they see, and they won't mind me saying this because it's so common, is just the term Wi-Fi. People aren't typing in broadband deals. They're typing in things like, compare broadband or fastest speeds in my area. That kind of stuff's what you'd expect to see in a search terms report, not just the word Wi-Fi. Now, there's obviously millions of searches taking place for the word Wi-Fi, but Google knows when to dip in and out of that search when it comes to the person's profile. So when I started seeing stuff like that, it makes me think, well, Google's way ahead of any optimizations we can do in that situation where they've got the data. Just let them do it. And it typically works. Yeah,
I agree with you on that. I'm actually, historically, I've been, pretty proactive on adding in negative keywords, but I'm also I'm actually starting. For me now, it more comes down into, especially if you're dealing with Broadmatch, I still prefer to have a longer tail Broadmatch keyword to help Google with the intent. So I generally try to have 3 or 4 words in it, and then also make sure that the landing page is really, really relevant, because so that Google pick up that data. But yeah, it is right. Like I'm more hesitant to add in negative keywords than what I was previously.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's one of those things that Google's intent matching has become so good when it comes to what consumers are looking for and how they're behaving. It understands intuitively what people are doing online, and I think it can match that to your campaigns really effectively now. So I typically give it the opportunity to do so, more so than kind of reining things in. Some advertisers, you do need to rein things in. There might be a very niche, as you say, B2B or even just a niche industry where it's not B2B, and you have to rein things in. But it is a situation where you get loads of conversions. You've got a wide kind of large market to address. Broadmatch for me is better than any match type out there at the moment.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I think we should probably talk about that a little bit. So we've spoken about, obviously, I think we'd both agree from what we're saying that Broadmatch is great, especially when there's, larger data pools or business to consumer type product. In terms of B2B, or when you're really, really niche, so is that a place where you're still probably leading off with exact match instead of Broadmatch?
Yeah, 100%. So I've got a couple of B2B clients, and one of them does stuff that's that massively could cross over into consumer. And that would be a big problem, because the difference between consumer inquiries and a commercial inquiry for this customer is massive. To put things in perspective, this business does a lot of AV hire. So they're looking at people who want to hire, for example, massive large format LED screens for events. So if you have like an awards night with a screen behind you, that massive kind of 6, 7, 8 meter wide screen, that's pure LED tiles. That's the work they want, but they don't want anything, consumery, which is, TV screens, screen hire, and that kind of thing. So, there's 2 very different markets there, and they don't want anything to do with the consumer side. For me, exact match is pretty much the only way we've been able to control that.
Yeah, no, and I mean, in some cases too, in cases like that, I'll even take it a step further and even really work with the client and go, look, at the moment or the foreseeable future, we can't even go into smart bidding. Like, we're going to have to keep this on a manual, just because like we had a client that they were in a very, very niche engineering. So it wasn't that they would actually draw like the schematics for the tooling machines for like, and vendors would come to them. So it was like a soup, but they could have like a lead that would be worth $1,000 or a lead that would be worth $500,000. Like the range was that big. And we said repeatedly that you're going to have to stick with exact match, and I can't really see if at the moment they're moving across to maximize conversion. So I think the biggest thing is I say to people is just keep in mind of the business. Don't go, we only do Broadmatch or we only do exact. Just think about the use cases.
100% agree with that. Yeah, business first, business use case first every single time. If it's not justified in the business, that niche example you gave there, then as you say, you don't really want to kind of try and push people towards smart bidding when intuitively and in the data you can see there's just not an opportunity there for it to work.
All right, so we've spoken about broad and exact. Let's now talk about phrase, and it's kind of been. I actually call it now the poor man's broad match. It's like, are you using it, or do you kind of see any use case for it at the moment?
Intuitively, it's something I struggle with a little bit, because I have clients who have been on Broadmatch, and when they get results from Google Ads, they need the cost per lead to come in at a very strict cost. We've gone on to Broadmatch, and they've struggled to kind of get the costs in at the right level. It's kind of a game of volume more so than controlling costs. And I think to get the balance right, we've seen that phrase match has worked better for that particular scenario. The issue I've got is we don't know why. It's one of those weird things where intuitively Broadmatch should be where they're at because they've got enough conversion data, but then it just hasn't really worked that well in terms of, the search terms can be a bit wild. We've used phrase match to kind of rein things in, and it has reined things in. Exact was a bit too restrictive because we did like a bit of openness, because a lot of random competitors would pop up on phrase match and they did convert, whereas on exact match, kind of pulling that list together reactively is near on impossible because there's so many competitors in this particular industry. So phrase worked pretty well for this particular client, but in all honesty, I'm thinking, how many people can I say that about client-wise, and how many people I've worked with that I can say that with? Probably literally that one use case is the only one that comes to mind. Well, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think I got the same sort of one or two, and it's purely just because it's an older account and phrase match is working, and because it's working, we're still able to scale it. I'm just going with this. I just don't see the point of changing it. But I'm pretty much like you, is that I would very much be on either broad match or exact match, or a combination of broad and exact. Very, very rarely, especially for a new account, would I really use phrase match at all.
Yeah, agreed. That's the thing. I think if you're looking at match types that are not long for this world, so to speak, I think phrase is definitely on the chopping block. We know what Google wants to do, and I think from an account management point of view, life could be a bit easier for newer advertisers if there were less match types to consider. And if you look at the options available, kind of targeted traffic or kind of smart bidding, that's kind of, based on user behavior and intent and using a lot more signals. So being a bit more open, you've got two clear routes or two clear options there. And phrase is kind of sitting in the middle, kind of the worst of both worlds in a way.
Yeah. Look, I think I definitely do see a world where phrase match doesn't exist anymore. Part of me even thinks that the reason why Google hasn't removed it is just basically just to stop a bit of resistance, because people would fire up about it. But when you look at, we've very much gone, like, especially, you go rewind pre-2020, those three match types worked very, very differently, and they were very very different use cases. Whereas now, as you say, like, I think broad match and phrase match just work so closely together now. Except with phrase match, you're not getting the extra signals which Google pulls in. So
that's it.
That's I guess probably my problem with it, and why I don't use it as a go-to case. Let's now talk about given the types with match types. I mean, one of the biggest tasks of a Google Ads manager for many years, especially when you start a new account, was keyword research and your ad group structure and that. So with the changes with match types and how they operate, how has this changed the way that you do your keyword research? What does your keyword research look like now?
So I think one of the things I advise clients is there's no harm in adding all keywords that you deem relevant for your business. There's no harm in doing that. As long as it's relevant to what you do and it's kind of exactly in line with what your offer is, then there's no harm. So I know, for example, you might have a handful of keywords in a keyword research through Keyword Planner. That kind of, if you didn't have 5 of this particular keyword variation and you only had 1 of them, Google will probably still serve your ads for all 5 variations anyway in terms of search terms, because Broadmatch is that open and can match those things. So it makes keyword research, I suppose, it should be less intensive in a lot of ways, because you don't need to cover every single exact thing if you're going for the Broadmatch approach. But I always say there's no harm in adding keywords that are relevant. In terms of structure, that's a big change, a massive change, because we're not in a world where you have to have an amazingly perfect segmented structure with like dozens and dozens of ad groups based on pure relevancy, like in the days of SCAG setups. Those days for me are long gone, and I think Broadmatch being where it is now and the smart matching that we're seeing from those searches, for me, it doesn't justify the work involved in setting things up in a SCAG perspective, and I think it makes Google's life more difficult as well in terms of the ability to bid effectively, spend budgets effectively. I've seen one of the most common things I do at the moment when auditing accounts is unifying campaigns where there's the justification to splitting things out just because of the keyword is not really a good approach anymore. You split things out based on business use case in terms of targeting and that kind of thing. But for me, I think keyword research wise, it should be a much more lighter touch approach. And I think what most people will find is 70 or 80% of their search terms will come from 20% or so of their keywords. So the process is a bit different to how it used to be. I still would cover all bases, just as a kind of, there's no harm in doing so. But if you're worried about not having 600 keywords in your account and you only have 400, I wouldn't worry about that necessarily.
No, I agree. Like, so for me, the way I kind of explain it through to clients, especially if they've got some previous experience with Google Ads and they're, if they're starting a new business or something like that, and they've seen, like, historically they would have got like a Google sheet with campaign structure and massive amounts of keywords. And then when you get them back and go, hey, look, we've got 2 campaigns with 2 ad groups in each one and 3 keywords to start with, it does shock them a little bit. But the way I explain it, obviously you've got to think on the reverse, is that if the keyword targeting is now a lot more broader, that means that we need less amount of ad groups, because previously when the keyword targeters were a lot more structured, you would need more ad groups to really break out to those different themes, whereas you don't need that now. So yeah, and I've always found too, I like your opinion on this or your perspective on this. I've always found in a search campaign, and this is over the last 2 years, if I have anything more than 5 ad groups, generally it goes between like 2 or 3 ad groups get all the spend, even if they're in different themes. I found that I've had to break them out into a separate campaign.
Yeah, that's right. Google goes in a direction, it finds what it's looking for, its bidding optimization, and when it finds it, it ignores everything else. You get in a situation, as you say, where you'll have ad groups in setups that are getting nothing. They're getting literally no visibility. And the search is there. You know that people are looking for it, but Google has just, for whatever reason, decided we're going to go narrow here because we're finding leads in this direction or sales in this direction. So we're not going to necessarily need to branch out. It's kind of like Google doesn't want to roll the dice with them anymore. So segmentation and splitting things out, there's an argument for that as a result of that scenario. But it is strange. It is strange because you think with smart bidding, you kind of think Google's job is to find leads or sales at a certain return or a certain cost. And if one of those levers it has of doing that is an ad group that you're actively bidding on, that's active and in your account, you think Google would leverage that. But I feel like Google doesn't want to roll the dice on that when they know there's a sure thing over here, and it kind of leaves behind potentially some important services for a business. And segmentation, as you say, there is really important.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've probably found, this isn't just with Google Ads, at any type of AI, I'm really finding that it's all about efficiency. So it always likes to find the least path of resistance. And that's, I think that's what's happening there, is that it goes, look, we know the traffic here, we know it's happening here, so we're just going to keep pounding down on this keyword theme or this ad group.
That's it, 100%.
Okay, now there's a bit of whisper in the Google Ads circles about this new term called Search Max. Have you looked into it, or what are your thoughts on how it's going to roll out or what it's going to be?
So I heard it come up when I was doing my usual kind of news cycles and looking through different news sources. And then I got on a call with one of my clients and the Google rep, not the reps that are kind of the salespeople, but the ones based in Dublin or whatever in head office. So they spend quite a bit of money so that they've got dedicated account management. And she brought it up and said, this is coming. And I said, can we go on the beta? And she said, you're not big enough. And I was like, okay, thanks for telling us. But we can't even join the beta, but it's fine. So I looked into it a bit more and I thought, well, there's nothing really new here in a way. There's not a lot really new. It's kind of unifying existing components. You've got, broad match is an existing component, dynamic search ads, the URLs and your website, using your website as kind of a point for Google to use as a data point to find clients and bid. That exists already. Performance Max, as we know it, exists already. So it's not really anything new. It's kind of unifying elements that already exist. But I suppose by unifying them, what they're trying to do is, again, kind of simplify the search product. It's good for onboarding new clients who are, from Google's perspective, who aren't sophisticated advertisers yet because they don't know how to set things up with structures, with keyword match types, etc. It's kind of a plug and play solution for search, which could be quite powerful for a new advertiser. But again, it goes back to Google's main objective, and it's kind of, I can foresee a world where Google really wants to tick the box of one challenge, which is to onboard as many new advertisers as possible. And that only happens when you remove complexity. If it gets too complex, people become apprehensive and it causes a barrier. So they remove that barrier. but also I suppose is if they open things up with a product that's AI based, you don't get much data out of it. Though I did see search terms are coming to PMAX, but I've not seen it in any interfaces yet.
No, I haven't seen it yet either.
That's it. So it's good news. I'm not going to complain that they've announced it. It's definitely good news for us as advertisers. But ultimately, Google's goal is, we want to intuitively understand what your business is doing. We want to generate assets for you. That's already in the system. We want to generate the traffic for you based on those assets, based on your website, based on kind of, intuitively what people are typing in and their behaviors online and how they're interacting with your campaign. And we want to take it all away from you. Now, in an ideal world, it sounds like a positive thing because, in all honesty, when I'm auditing clients' accounts, some accounts I'm auditing, I look at their Google Ads setup and I think there's nothing wrong here, but there's something wrong with their website or their offer or their positioning, or they haven't thought about this. And a lot of what I'm doing is outside of the interface. So that's not a bad thing in a way, but I think we still need to see the data. We still need to see what's inside the black box. How is it working? How can we steer it or control it? And if we remove, Google's been taking levers away from advertisers, levers of control for years now. And it's going to culminate in this kind of situation where we don't have any. And that's not the best position to be in because it means we don't know where our spend is going. And search term data, I've got clients who are getting 30% visibility on search terms sometimes. And it's not it's really not good. Google wins that. We don't win that.
To be honest, I've been pretty surprised with some of the rollouts with Performance Max that are coming out with the search terms and the account level negative keywords. So I didn't think Google would give way on those requests. So it's been interesting. And now they're even talking about, they've made the announcement they're going to be releasing network data. So you're going to see your search, shopping, display spend. So these are all things I didn't think they'll release. I think a lot of people were a little bit worried about Search Max. I think it's just going to be a rolling in, as you say, of dynamic. I do potentially see dynamic search going away and basically being rolled in as this Search Max, which is essentially what it's going to be doing. My understanding of Search Max is it's basically just like a dynamic search. It's just you're not giving the keyword, you're just giving the URL, and it's taking the keyword data from the URL. So it's basically another extension of what Broadmatch does.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. I think that's kind of what the direction Google wants to go in is kind of, we see your website, we know what you do intuitively as a result of looking through that and matching traffic to that. Now, all we need from you is your credit card. That's basically where I see things going.
Yeah.
For better or for worse.
Look, another thing we'd like to chat on before we finish as well, because this is one thing that I don't think enough digital marketers are paying attention to, is really thinking about the reason for why these changes are happening. My view on this, and I'd be interested to get your view, my view on this is the reason for why there's been so many changes happening is because the user experience is going to change on this Google search side. I think ChatGPT is going to be taking, but let's be real, it's still only 5% of market share as of last year. That will definitely grow, but I also see the biggest change would be inside of when people do a Google search. So the biggest change that I'll be seeing is that once people do that initial keyword research, that it will switch over to a chat-based search. And that's where all of these things become really, really important, because what you're going to be seeing is there's going to be, rather than, in search 4 placements at the top, the 6 at the bottom, the chatbot is going to be, or your agent is going to be recommending maybe 1 or 2 ads. So that's where this type of, when we talk about search match, we talk about broader intent, for me, that's where it's all wrapped into, and that's why Google is going down that path, because traditional search is not going to be there in the years to come.
That makes a lot of sense when you phrase it like that, because for me, as you say, people are going to stop using traditional search in the long term, potentially. That's on the table. We can see that for sure. That conversation-based chatbot experience is something Google is aware of. And interestingly, I saw a report, it might have been even today or even maybe yesterday, a Google exec accidentally let slip that it's a bit of an issue, or it's just a bit of a frustration that they have to send traffic to websites. They actually let slip that actually Google, we want everyone to get everything they need from Google, not from someone else's website. So it's a bit of an issue that people are going to websites and we're sending traffic to websites. I don't know whether he was meant to say that or whether it slipped, but it tells you exactly kind of what you said there is, Google are moving away from that typical search experience. They're very aware that ChatGPT is going to eat its lunch if they're not careful. So that kind of ties into the experience of, moving away from keywords, focusing on intent, focusing on website content, and tying that into replying to prompts with website content based on what the person's looking for. That intuitively ties together.
Yeah, which is why I think I'm saying to every business, this is the year that you should be starting to dabble into video content. Because when you look at obviously Google, that's why they're leaning so heavy into YouTube and with demand gen and those things as well, is because they know that they've got to replace what they're going to be losing with the Google search, and they're going to be replacing that with YouTube revenue and video revenue. So, and look, additionally on that as well, we've seen really great results with search campaigns being increased by adding in a video campaign or demand gen campaign on top of it as well.
Yeah, no, that's really positive. I think that kind of setup in an account where you're kind of filling up the top of the funnel and mid funnel
Exactly
on top of search and building that kind of audience for what you do is a really, really good way to scale accounts. And I think when businesses are ready to do that, when they can actually produce the content that can get cut through and that can deliver, then it's a really good tool to have. Really good.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so as a wrap up, so let's just, for people listening, because we are talking about keywords, is that obviously don't be afraid to use broad match, but very much it's probably more, you're seeing better results in the business consumer market. Exact match is probably still the king for B2B or very, very super niche markets, is that what we were saying from there. And then obviously just be open to your structures. You may have to play around and merge campaigns and merge groups together, because we've got a broader keyword to match that. Hey, Darren, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Just for anyone watching you, if you go into the description notes, I've got some links on where you can find Darren has his own YouTube channel, which produces amazing content. And also we'll put a link into his website as well. But yeah, I don't know if you've got any final remarks, but it's been an absolute pleasure having you here, Darren.
No, it's been amazing. I watch your stuff all the time, and it's really amazing to talk to you. It's been the first time, and it's been a fantastic chat. So I look forward to hopefully more in the future as well.
Look forward to it, mate. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.